Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I post about 3 videos every single week on one of these topics, ranging from deep dives every Saturday to reacting to the crazy things cult leaders say every Tuesday, all the way to Thursday's real survivor stories. And today, we are focusing on Mormon survivor stories. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and jump on in. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell and maybe even hype the video if you so choose. Thanks so much for being here. Our first story, I came out to my bishop. I'm not sure what possessed me, but I decided to come out to my bishop as bisexual at church today. I'll try to keep this short, but the conversation was more than an hour long, so there's a lot to cover. I'd lost my faith in December 2023. I'm unable to leave because I'm a minor. Lately, I've been getting annoyed with the bishop asking me to do temple recommend interviews, so I decided to ask my bishop if they would stop asking me. My bishop obviously wanted to know why, so I ended up confessing that I lost my faith. Eventually, the conversation drifted to how the church treats the queer community, and I guess I was emotional, so I also ended up telling him that I'm bisexual and in love with another girl. We're not together, but we've kissed, so hopefully, I hope that for you too. Anyways, I'm going to include the highlights of how he responded when I told him that. He told me that how I feel is normal and that everyone struggles with the law of chastity, basically treating my sexuality as an illness. I also told him that both my psychiatrist and my therapist have recommended me to explore my sexuality, which he said he found concerning because they were encouraging me to go against my core values. He encouraged me to come out to my parents, which I am not ready to do. He compared gay sex to eating junk food, then feeling sick afterwards, saying that it feels good in the moment, but you don't feel right after. I am having a difficult time with that one. Yeah. I don't know. Sounds like this guy has some experience, if you ask me. He told me that because I'm bi, I should be patient because how I feel is only a phase, and that because I'm also attracted to men, I should wait a couple of years, and by then I'll find a man to fall in love with, get married, and have kids with. He said I seem very intelligent and mature. It's almost as if I can use common sense, ... Now, if you thought any of that was bad, the worst part is that I'm stuck having to talk to him on a regular basis because he wants to check in with me every other week. Wish me luck, I guess. I have no idea why I did this to myself. I think that this is a really brave thing to do because what's really tricky about the Mormon faith is these bishops are, you're kind of conditioned to not just look up to these bishops as your elders, but also obviously as people you confide in, almost like a confessional in the Catholic Church, where that is your opportunity to get something off of your chest without judgment. But here we see the bishop judging her and basically discouraging her from exploring something that he is going to deem sinful. He's honestly very dismissive of what she's saying and is only looking at the situation from his indoctrinated culty lens, probably thinking that same-sex relationships are bad. And equating that to junk food to me just feels horribly inappropriate. I think this OP was really, really brave in sharing it. And, she asks, like, why did I do this to myself? Well, you did this to yourself because you don't feel comfortable coming out to your parents because you're probably fearful of what their reaction will be, assuming you've grown up in this church, because you mentioned that you are still a minor. You're unable to leave. You feel, it seems, I don't want to speak for you, but it seems like you feel a little bit stuck where you are, which I absolutely empathize with. That cannot be easy. And if you're a minor, you are probably having complicated emotions. That part can be true. You might be confused with how you see people. You might be bisexual. You might also be gay. And either of those things are okay. It sounds like you likely aren't straight if you are starting to feel this attraction towards women. And it just goes to show that people within the Mormon church and many Christian-based faiths, they believe that it is a choice. They believe that if you just suppress it, it will not come to fruition and you can, you know, have children and get married and all of this stuff. But not everybody wants to do that. And the fact that he's discouraging you to listen to your psychologist and your counselor is concerning to me because he only wants you to see one side. I think it's not just that, you know, you seem very intelligent and mature because you can use common sense. It sounds like you're also learning how to critically think. You're having experiences in your life that directly contradict your experience in the church. And so that is kind of clicking that critical thinking on. I think you're in a great place. I think you're also in a very vulnerable place. And if I were to give you a piece of unsolicited advice, I would say find someone outside of the church who you can confide in. Maybe this new girl you've started seeing, and see if you can just talk it out with them to gain some different perspective, but also so that you have a strong support system that's outside of the church in case you do decide to leave, whether it's tomorrow or in the future when you turn 18. One person responded to OP's post, and I was gonna try to look this up, but they say, you need to be prepared. The bishop will tell your parents about this. Do not go to the check-ins. I agree. I don't believe that these bishops are people you can trust. They have one priority, and that is the church, and they're going to push those views down your throat. They are going to out you to your parents, no matter if you're ready or not. So, unfortunately, it's kind of like being forced to out yourself before you're ready. And that's not your fault. That's very much the bishop's fault. He thinks that if he can get your parents to intervene in your self-exploration of your sexuality, that you will turn back towards the church and quote unquote be saved and become straight again, which is just, a crock. Someone else responds, former bishop here. Was there an adult present or an accompanying adult outside the room while you met and talked about these things? If not, that conversation shouldn't have taken place and would have been a huge breach of safeguarding standards. Plus, the conversation you described is one I would never have had in those terms with someone confessing to me something so private. I would have probably focused on showing compassion and understanding of the situation and refraining from even getting close to a sex-focused conversation. No, no. Finally, you don't owe anything to the bishop. If you don't want to meet, that's your prerogative and no one else's. Agency. If you do decide to meet, I'd suggest to make the boundaries very clear, starting from not discussing any details about sex. Wishing you the best in what's coming, and hopefully things will get better and you will have the right support you deserve. That's so nice coming from a former bishop. Another commenter says, he compared gay sex to eating junk food, then feeling sick afterwards, saying it feels good in the moment, but you don't feel right after. How ridiculous of him to presume how you feel or would feel. Everyone's experiences are different. Honestly, when I read this comment from him, my immediate thought was, how would he know? Does he know this from personal experience? It might have been fun to ask him that. With that being said, I'm sorry for your experience and that he wants to meet with you on an ongoing basis. That's tough. Remember, you can always decline. I would also echo the counsel given that while the church claims to protect confidentiality, they bastardize confidentiality just like they do agency and consent. They don't really understand any of those things and use words in whatever way benefits or justifies them most. Always assume anything you tell your bishop will be shared with others, which is just such a dangerous situation to be in. I'm really sorry you're in this situation, OP. This is also from the ex-Mormon sub. The title is, I Don't Know What I Believe. I joined the church at 15 as the only member in my family. I didn't find out almost any of the lies and crazy things that are on people's shelves until I went down the rabbit holes starting 2 years ago. Now I feel so much anger towards the church. My husband and I left along with our 6 children because of a situation that occurred in our ward with our bishop that caused us to lose our car and our home. Wow. It took us 15 years to financially recover because we tried so hard to repay back tithing. We just wanted to be able to go to the temple. After leaving, I found out about Mormon stories and the huge online ex-Mormon community, the Book of Abraham, the CES letter, a letter to my wife about church finances, about the second anointing, about the Masonic ceremony, about the abuse lawyer hotline, about how much Canadian tithing goes to BYU, about all of Joseph Smith's wives, especially the teenage ones. All of that and more was news to me. I'm 60 years old and feel like I wasted so much of my life working toward reaching imaginary goals, feeling guilt and shame, wasting a lot of money, and just not measuring up. And now, at age 60, I don't know what to believe. All of the gaslighting that's happening is such BS because those of us who were members of the church through the Spencer W. Kimball era and even beyond that believed that the church was 100% infallible. We were told that the church is perfect, but the people aren't. We were told that God's standards never changed. We were proud to be Mormons. Now, I know that everything I was taught and believed was a huge lie. I don't know what to believe now. I can't even imagine not believing in God. I've been so focused on what I do not believe that I haven't really spent time discovering what I actually do believe. Aw. Deconstruction is no joke. It's so hard to feel like I'm standing on firm ground. Transitioning from a life where I had very few of my own decisions to make to having no direction at all has been so hard. Gosh, I can't imagine being in something for that long, for 45 years, and it feels like everything was a lie. That has to be so difficult to reconcile. I want to talk about something that she said, back tithing. Now, I'm wondering if they didn't go through like the proper channels to leave, which I'm going to have to do more research about. If you are an ex-Mormon and you want to share a little bit of insight in the comments below about what the process of leaving does look like. I know there are a lot of complicated faith-based, not legal things, but faith-based things that, people probably have to do in order to get out of the church, just like if they want to unseal their marriage within the temple, there's like a whole process to that before you're like officially divorced. So I'd assume when you kind of like break up with the church, it's probably something very similar. But I don't know if legally a church can demand back tithing. Like you have to provide, because the church does demand 10% of everybody's income as like tithing to the church. It's effectively like your donation to the church, but it's mandatory, so it's not really a donation. But considering that churches are typically nonprofits and aren't supposed to be paying taxes and aren't supposed to be demanding money, obviously it's in the name, they're not supposed to be for profit. I'm not sure that back tithing would actually be legal in this case, so I would definitely look into what your rights, OP, are as a Utah citizen and see if you can recoup any of those funds, because leaving your church should not lead to financial ruin. Back tithing should not be a thing. You no longer want to be involved in something. You no longer want to pay for something. You are no longer receiving a service. So you don't need to be paying that amount of money. It doesn't really make any sense to me. So I would definitely be curious to see what your legal rights were in regard to that. It just really breaks my heart that you are somebody who should be in a place in your life where you know exactly who you are, exactly what you want, and you're trying to deconstruct from being indoctrinated for 45 years. That has to be so, so difficult, and I'm so sorry you're having this experience. And this sentiment is shared with the commenters. One says, "It is okay to be angry. It's okay to feel the full range of emotions as you process your exit. It's okay to take all the time you need to process your exit. Young or old, count each day out as a blessing. If a church official caused you to lose your car and home, I would consult legal advice. No matter what age you are, you get an enormous credit for learning what you have learned. Best wishes to you." I really love that comment. Someone else says, "I could have written a lot of this. I'm also 60 and feeling like I wasted my life in this house of lies and deception. Unfortunately, my DH is still TBM, and one of my sons just announced that he wants to go on a mission. I literally threw up. It's my fault. I led him down this path. I'm so angry at myself for being foolish enough to not explore both sides when I was a teen. Hang in there. We will figure it out. I think this is such an important stories to be hearing, because sometimes when we talk about ex-members, we only talk about like what got them out and what the short period of like healing after getting out looks like. If we really think in the grand scheme of cults that have been taken down recently or featured in documentaries and docuseries recently, like Nexium, Twin Flames universe, even maybe the FLDS, these people who have escaped these groups, luckily, a lot of them that have been in the public eye are younger. They're in their, late 30s, early 40s. They've started to deconstruct. They're even in maybe their late 20s, early 30s. They've gotten out of these situations. They have their whole life to live. And that can feel like you wasted so much time. Add 10, 15, 20, 40, 45 years to that equation. I can't imagine the emotional turmoil you would be in. And I just want to say here, if you're listening to this, there's no need to blame yourself, although I'm sure it's easy to do that. It's not your fault that somebody took advantage of you. In 3 comments on one single post, we've heard of multiple people getting involved with this church when they're teenagers. What does that say about the church? It says that it is preying upon vulnerable teenagers, their formative years, when they're very impressionable. They're kind of seeking out these young people, putting their claws into them and not letting go for decades. That is not your fault. I, for one, am proud of every single person who has gotten out, who has escaped, who has allowed the wool to be pulled off of your eyes, who's taken off the rose-colored glasses to see the truth, because that has got to be so difficult. It is so difficult. And yes, maybe you drew your children or other family members into the group, but you could never have known that at the time because you were already in the group for years, if not 10 years already. So you can't blame yourself. All you can do is lead by example. All you can do is ask your children, your family members who are still involved in the group, thoughtful questions and hope that they see the light themselves, which I'm sure they will if you go about it the right way. But first and foremost, you cannot blame yourself. You were exploited. You were taken advantage of when you were vulnerable, and that's not your fault. This next post is called Elder Ex-Mormons, and it asks, are there former members that were in the church for decades? What made you leave? Someone responds, like so many in this Reddit group, I was all in. The church narrative and gospel were my world. I gave the church everything. At 51 years old and after years of studying apologetics, I realized that all of the hoops and mental gymnastics disappeared with one simple change in perspective. It's all made up. It suddenly made sense. Every single thing fit together. No apologetics required. The lack of BOM evidence, every stupid policy change, racism, polygamy, fanciful foundation stories, screwy revelations, legal shenanigans, everything fit a man-made organization. No God required. I felt like I was in emotional freefall for several weeks, but slowly began to discover more intellectual freedom and love for others than I ever knew before. That makes me so happy to hear. This is a good way to explain it. Finally, the world made sense. I always felt kind of stupid listening to these scholars explaining the gospel, and things never lined up right. When I took a step back and looked at the facts instead of apologetics, it all became clear. My spiral happened when I realized my whole view of the afterlife had crumbled. All my life I knew, like really knew what was going to happen when we die. Now I had no idea, just like everyone else. It felt like I had no floor under me, like I was falling in space. I feel like that's why a lot of people come to organized religion or cults, is this idea of either living forever or enlightenment or obsession with death and what that looks like for us. And honestly, I've thought about this a lot too, because I've never really been afraid of dying, but I do question what dying looks like or will look like very often. So I think that for me, anyways, the best way to kind of accept that it's inevitable is also to accept that we don't know and there is no way we will really know. I love the idea of reincarnation. Like, I would love my next life to just be like my cat Gatsby, and I'm just like with a really great owner for decades, and I just have to eat and sleep all day. I feel like that'd be a great break from this timeline that we're currently on. But a girl can dream, can't she? What does that say about me that I'm like, in my next life, I just want to be a house cat? We struggling, y'all. All right, this was posted 8 days ago, and it's titled, The Next Step in My Journey. I was released as bishop yesterday, and it is a mixed bag of emotions. I've posted before a little of my shelf break to PIMO journey while serving as a bishop. I've been in PIMO mode for 2 years. So PIMO mode in Mormon lingo means physically in but mentally out. PIMO. Finally, the need for authenticity made pretending to toe the faithful line impossible. The timeline has been as follows. In August, I disclosed my unbelief to my wife. Her response has been amazing. She is continuing to believe, but in a super healthy, supportive way. While there are many challenges upcoming, our relationship is so much better with the honesty of our beliefs in the open and vulnerable to discussion. Oh, that's great, because honestly, you don't always hear that. I think that sharing that you're ready to leave a cult with your family member or a loved one that is still in the cult is probably one of the most difficult things you can do, because so many cults will shun you immediately if you express doubt, or they will report you to the leader and the leader will punish you, shun you, or try to basically like re-indoctrinate you into the cult and like cut off all of your critical thinking. In September, and with support from my wife, I had a meeting with the state president. He's someone I've known professionally for many years. I told him that I had deconstructed and could no longer play the part of bishop. I enjoyed the bully pulpit to talk about some of the issues with the church. It was good to show that I'm not leaving over offense or sin. He did ask if there were any indiscretions on my part. I enjoyed that I could smirk and crush his presuppositions on why testimonies get lost. I would never, as an adult man, confess anything to a church leader, but I have been, if anything, more righteous during my deconstruction than during my time before. He did also ask if the large amount of welfare help I provide is due to seeing the church as a bloated business. I told him that I only did as I thought Jesus would do, which is true. He was implying that I've been too free with the church pockets. That hurt that money was once again at the forefront of leadership minds. I know for a fact that he has had to answer to area authorities on the large amount of fast offering assistance sent out from my ward. I discussed options with him. My ward is super small, old, and shriveled. Only 60 members any given Sunday, average age of 65. The best solution would be to realign wards and release me in the process. Fast forward to this week. He called and asked to meet with my wife and I. He told us that they were collapsing my ward. I get so frustrated with the stupid, unnecessary secrecy in the culture of the church. He didn't want to have us tell anyone, not even my counselors. It's so unnecessary to keep people in the dark. It is that same thing that creates the culture that can harbor predators and abusers. That is true. Last night, the meeting was held, and I was released along with everyone in my ward. I really am unsure how to feel. I'm relieved to have the responsibility gone, but I truly love the people on my ward. Many gave me hugs and thanks after the meeting. It will be hard for them when I start slipping in my attendance and the rumor mill starts. The next part of my story will be to talk to my new bishop. I was the most senior bishop in my stake and took a role of mentor with him. To then tell him the church isn't true and harmful will be a big change in our relationship. I'm so grateful to have this sub to navigate the ex-Mo journey. Knowing that I'm not alone in my experience is a great support. Thank you all. I know that that can be so difficult, and they probably don't want you to say anything suppressive to this new bishop because they probably obviously want to keep congregants coming into the church so that they can make more money and get those donations and those tithings. But I applaud and commend you for actually sticking to your guns and leaving, and especially your wife too. It's so important that she is supporting you, and I really wish you the best on your path forward. All right, so this is a very interesting one, in my opinion. This post says, by request, I am a Black ex-Mo, AMA. For a little background, I was raised in the church since birth. I realized everything was a fraud in December 2008 at 18 years old, and I finally stopped attending Q1 of 2009. I was extremely faithful right up until I left. I had my doubts and issues, but was convinced the church was true, and I followed all the rules. Looking back, I don't think anyone followed the rule, including myself. This included no intercourse, early morning seminary, all 4 years of high school, and sustained guilt about looking at porn and continually lying to priesthood leaders about it. The fact that priesthood leaders are even asking minors about what they're watching online and how they're experimenting with themselves in their intimate life is really, really odd to me. Like, why must you know? Why is that pertinent to their faith and their development? Just so you know if they're sinning? I don't like that. My father was a local leader in the church until his death, if that is of interest to anyone. This is the only portion of the AMA that I might not answer in full for various reasons. I've also been directly affected by church revisionism, PR strategies, so ask away. I'm not really sure what you guys would ask, but I sincerely mean this when I say, ask me anything, Reddit. For a bit of added drama, my exit from the church happened when I was sort of watching Adult Swim, spaced out, thinking about LUE at around 1:30 a.m. Around that time in my life, I'd been contemplating the sheer absurdity of it all, this existence, and then I realized the absurdity of basing my entire life around the words or assorted men through writing allegedly passed down over millennia. However, something I feel was interesting about my falling away from the church was the dual nature of my rejection of the church. I cannot accurately tell you in what order they occurred, but my rejection of the church was accompanied by a rejection of Christianity in its entirety. Back to the absurdity mentioned above, my thought process was as follows. Why do we need Christ to save us? How, why, and where did the fall of man occur? So the fall of man required a literal expulsion of man from the garden, question mark? And shit. It is because of this thought process that I feel that evolution is incompatible with a lot of forms of Christianity. Some believe there was absolutely no death in the Garden of Eden, barring the possibility of a divinely guided evolution within the Christian narrative. Anyway, for me, the further I delved into the genealogy, oh, the irony of my beliefs, I could not arrive at a reason why I should believe any of the dogma I was taught as a child. One thing I credit the LDS Church for is their encouragement of critical thinking, however guided it may be. Independent reading and study of scripture is heavily encouraged, and I have seen many cerebral and controversial discussion occur during church classes, even to the point where people will disagree with the current or past prophets. This is in contrast to other sects of Christianity, where critical thinking is either shunned or entirely not present. And someone asks, didn't the original doctrine suggest Black people were those who hadn't chosen God and were cursed with burnt skin and smashed noses? Did you find this out while questioning the church? Whoa, that's one of the most racist things I've ever heard in my entire life. But OP responds and says, if my knowledge of the Book of Mormon isn't failing me, Pacific Islanders are descended from a group of good, and he quotes, darkies. I am so sorry. I need to put a trigger warning at the beginning of this post. There's so much racism here. Looking back, it's amazing how blatantly racist the Book of Mormon is. White skin equals good, dark skin equals bad is a motive that occurs throughout. Wow. You're referring to the curse and mark of Cain, which is in the story of the book of Genesis regarding Cain and Abel. If someone harmed Cain, the damage would come back sevenfold. Some interpretations view this as a physical mark, whereas other interpretations see the mark as a sign and not as a physical mark on Cain himself. Man, religion's dark, y'all. OP responds and says, I found this and many more things while investigating the church. The LDS Church has the nasty, nasty habit of cleaning up its past, but thank goodness for the research library I have access to. I want that research library. There I found original copies of Brigham Young's speech before church censors were able to clean them up for the latter days. You wouldn't believe some of the things I found in books published by the church. Someone asks, did you pay your 10% tithe? And if so, how do they keep track of it? OP responds, I still rage when I think about that 10% tithe that me, my family, and other faithful Mormons paid, and its incredibly regressive nature. I used to be the assistant ward clerk, so I can tell you exactly how they keep track of things. Every Sunday, the amount tithes are entered into the computer database, and weekly, some places bi-monthly, the local database is synced with the master database out in Salt Lake. Once a year, near the close of the calendar year, a priesthood leader sits down with you and a printout of your tithes from the current calendar and asks you, can you honestly say that you are a full tithing payer on gross, mind you, not take home? Weird shit. Someone says, it's not necessarily on growth. There is a lot of individual variation. The bishop doesn't sit down and say, are you a full tithe payer on gross? He says, are you a full tithe payer? The law of tithing is 10% of one's increase. How one counts that increase is up to the individual. Personally, when I got paychecks, I would pay on the full take home. That extra money that goes to the government may have theoretically been mine at some point, but it was never part of my meaningful increase on my part, so I felt no obligation to pay it. What constitutes tithable income varies a lot more than you think. That's interesting. I really find it, I mean, and I'm sure everyone listening finds it so offensive that the church dares to teach Black people racist doctrine. It's so violently offensive to me that it just makes me want to light my hair on fire. I might do an entire deep dive on the racist culture of Mormonism because it is so disgusting that this Black man had this experience in the church and then was taught that, what are they teaching? Oh, Black person, come to the church, and if you believe in God, you will get lighter skin. What is that? What is that? I'm so angry on this person's behalf because it's just teaching this and of course, every organized religion, they depend on shame to make people follow their rules. But to make someone feel shame for the own color of their skin makes me so insanely angry. So, I think that's a really good stopping point. I'm feeling very frustrated yet inspired to call this out in a deep dive. So that'll be coming very soon, most likely. I really, really appreciate everyone for sticking around. I would love to know if you like this style of video. I'm in this phase of kind of experimenting with my channel. I'm trying to see if going live more is something that we all like to do together, or if you guys like my deep dives versus my storytelling or roasting cult leaders. I'm just trying to give you guys a full spectrum of different educational tools because I know we all learn in different ways. I think it's really valuable to hear stories like this. I think it's really valuable to hear deep dives. I think it's really valuable to call out cult leaders for the BS that they spout. So if you have any resources, any people you'd like me to take a look at, any cults you'd like to suggest, any crazy video you hear a spiritual leader or a cult leader saying, and you're like, what does this even mean? And you want me to debunk anything, go ahead and send it my way to letfresherin@gmail.com, or you can send it to me on Instagram, TikTok at I think there's an underscore between each word. So let the fresh Erin or let fresh Erin. So check me out on all other platforms, y'all. And I just really, really appreciate you being here. So without further ado, everybody, please stay safe out there, ask questions, and always stay skeptical. I'll see you in my next video very soon. Bye.